Hi, and welcome back to Talking Team CBT. I'm Angela Poach. I'm a level 5 trainer and therapist. Today, I want to go through 3 flow charts that I created with a little inspiration from David. David said he'd like them even simpler. So I'm going to give this big caveat before you start watching. If you know nothing about Team CBT, just stop watching this video. This is going to be for more middle to advanced practitioners who know something about Team CBT. They understand some of the terms I'm about to talk about. So that's the caveat to this video, is this is moderate to advanced. So level 3, level 4s, that's what this is for. Okay, so let's have a look at the mood work flowchart. This is kind of the core of Team CBT. We do some habit and some relationships, but most team therapists do focus on mood work, anxieties, all different kinds of anxieties, depression, feeling inferior, that sort of thing. So that's what this flowchart is for. And you'll see on the flowchart, we have a start guide. So if we look, right at the top, there's start. And then we have the little arrow downwards. The first thing we do is empathy. And in team, we want to make sure the client feels 100% understood. We want to know, what's my grade? And I'm trying a new thing out with the mouse. Looks like it's timing out. So I'm hoping it'll be clear in the video if I use something a little, it's called a sticky mouse. I wish I could circle. I haven't figured that out yet in this program, but anyways. So if a client feels 100% understood, then we go yes. Then we go to the 2-step invitation, or simply the straightforward invitation. If the client does not feel 100% understood, then we're going to go to this no. And it's pretty simple. We return back to empathy, right? Until the client feels understood. And we might end up in this loop for several sessions, depending on the client, depending on your skill level, and so on and so forth. So yes, once we have a yes, client feels understood, then we're going to go to this 2-step invitation. I'm going to pause and let's go back up to empathy. I just made a note of what can we do in empathy? There are some tools we could use in the empathy phase. We want to know, why is the client seeking help? We want to connect with them. We might use the miracle cure question. We'll use 5 secrets. We may even use a downward arrow or what if technique, just some exploratory tools and so on. Now, in the invitation, step 1 is the client ready to work? And 2, if they're ready to work, what do they want to work on? Some specificity here. And of course, if they're ready to get to work, we follow this yes down. If they're not ready to get to work, if they're like, yeah, I kind of want some help, but there's so much more I need to tell you and share with you, again, we just return back to empathy. And again, we would follow this flowchart again. We don't jump down. We would go until the client feels understood. We do either what's my grade or look at the score on the ETS. Then we would invite again, right? So they say yes to this invitation. At this point, we want to conceptualize. We're assuming mood work at this point. Usually we know that from our consultation with the client, but it can shift. And if at this point the client decides what they want to work on is, getting more sleep because they're finding, I can't even do the homework that you're providing me. I can't, it's just too much. I'd like to work on sleep. We might go to the habit flowchart, and so on. So then we pick the moment in time, and that's where we get out the daily mood log, because now we've already conceptualized this is mood work, and we'll write down the upsetting event, the emotions, and the negative thoughts and how much they believe the negative thoughts. That's the part 1 of the mood log, and we're going to pause there. Then we ask the magic button. If I had a button here and I can make all of this go away and you'd feel wonderful, would you want to push that button? And then we go on to positive reframing. And that's what are all the benefits of how you're feeling right now? You're not crazy for how you feel. In fact, it probably says some really amazing things about you. Our emotions are there to inform and help us process life. They're not a bad thing. And so we're going to explore all the good things about our emotions. After we do that, we ask the pivot question, and that is, we're kind of finding out, is the client ready for change? I have demonstrations of all of these on my website, by the way, and you can see those there. I mean, I have a basics class that's really low cost, and you can even take it free if you don't want to pay anything. Then after the pivot question, if they're not ready for change, we sit with open hands. Yeah, it makes sense. You don't want to, do any change. We could even fall back to empathy at this point. Sometimes the client argues for change pretty quickly when we say, oh yeah, it sounds like you don't want to, sounds like this is working for you and how you're feeling is working for you. And they're like, no, it's not working for me. It's too intense, or it's getting in the way of my relationships, or any number of things that the client might say. And when they do that, that's arguing for change. They're not actually going to say to you, yes, I want to change. Right. You're going to have to use some clinical judgment here. Then we go back, if they say yes, they're ready for change, we're going to go into process resistance. Actually, in this one here, if you've done the pivot question and they argue for change, we're going to pop back up to magic dial, because I don't want to put too many arrows on here, right? All right, so pivot question, are they ready for change? Yes, I'm ready for change. Magic dial. All right, well, how much do we want to dial around these emotions? Like, maybe it's 0. Maybe I don't want to feel any depressed when I get up in the morning. Maybe it makes sense to feel a little sad because I'm still going through a loss. And so that will greatly vary, not only by the client, but also the moment in time, because that's really critical to this magic dial. So that's part 2 of the mood log, right? Is setting the goal for the emotions. After you do that, we just jump right into process resistance. If they accept that, yes, I have some things to do to feel better, then we would go on to methods. And if they don't, we go back to this open hands. We can explore open hands a little more. I talked about arguing for change at the pivot question point. Then we go back to magic dial. If it's showing process resistance and they're like, no, I'm ready to invest what it's going to take to get better, then we can go back. Then we can just go into methods. Kind of not loving this. Like I say, it's hard to put all the arrows exactly where you need them to go. And then we have a fallback position if a client continues to say, you know what, I don't really want to change, or this is not really the right methodology for them. Maybe interfamily systems would be better, or some other modality. This is just, it's too, I don't know if the word clinical, too cognitive, too cerebral. We might have a different fallback position. I won't get into all the details of what all these, like I could spend hours on every one of these little sentences here, okay? So methods is mood log part 3. We're going to help them come up with positive counter beliefs. They're going to rewrite their negative emotions, their thoughts first, and then their emotions. And after they've completed a mood log, we would do relapse preparation training using externalization of voices. And then we go on to the next goal, which is likely to be another daily mood log, so we can make sure we're reinforcing all of the things that they're learning and their thinking processes or termination, if you've already done a bunch of these, right? Another goal could be self-defeating belief work, where we get into some of the core psyche issues that are really at the root of some of these negative thoughts, because the negative thoughts come out of self-defeating belief work. So could be any kind of goal, might be a habit work, and so on. So that's the mood log. All right, let's look at the habits flow chart. So there's some similarities here, right? So we have the start. We always go to empathy first. Again, does the client feel understood? Yes or no. Return to empathy. Yes. Do the invitation. Now the invitation is different in habits. In habits, we use a paradoxical invitation. We want the client to convince us they want to do this work. In no way in team do we ever try to convince a client to do the work. This may go against your training, and again, use your best clinical judgment. I'm not here to, many of you have doctorates and masters and all of that stuff, so use your clinical judgment. I'm just telling you from David Burns' modality and perspective that we just want to give clients the space to make their own decisions. So if you work in intervention type modalities, we wouldn't use this chart at all, right? You would use your training to do intervention. And there's definitely times when that's necessary. And it works really well for like people who are very, very connected and they have a good relationship. Often interventions can be helpful. They're not as successful as we would like in psychology, but okay, so just keep that in mind. As I'm talking about all these pieces, we're talking about this for a team therapist who a client has come and said, I want to quit smoking. I want to quit drinking. I want to, not blow off the handle, because I do use this for anger management. I find anger management needs both mood work and habit work and relationship work. I find it needs kind of a bit of all three. All right, so paradox invitation is really just like, I'm not sure I want to put you through this. It's going to be pretty tough. We're going to be honest, genuine. This is not reverse psychology. It's going to sound like reverse psychology or motivational interviewing, but we genuinely, as a team therapist, genuinely want the client to make the choice. And we genuinely won't judge them if they decide they don't want to do this work. Because let's face it, we all have things we don't want to give up that we'd probably be better off giving up. And maybe that's not causing as much physical damage or emotional damage. I'll leave that out there for you to kind of summarize and think about. Summarize isn't the right word, but to chew on. So, all right, let's say they convince us, yes, I am ready to get to work. This is ruining my life, or it's holding me back. Maybe it's not so dramatic. If they're not ready to get to work, we go back to empathy again. Again, sometimes clients need to be heard and understood, and that can actually be quite motivating. So this has been quite successful in team therapy. I hear clinicians tell me all the time this has been a game changer in helping clients to move forward with habit work. It seems counterintuitive that we'd be like, oh yeah, like it's totally up to you, no judgment here. Like, well, it sounds like we're going to be supporting them in their addiction. But for some reason, this is why it's paradoxical. It's why it's a paradoxical invitation. For some reason, there's this paradox when we take out the judgment and we truly give a client freedom of choice. They believe now they actually have a choice. So often in habit work, we feel like we can't do it. I can't give this up. Like we feel like there's something wrong with our brain, something wrong with us chemically, that we can't give up this addiction, this habit. And when a therapist is like, hey, it's up to you. It's totally up to you. You can choose whatever choice you make. Because as you're using that word choice, it's going into their mind. They're like, oh, I do have a choice. Okay, now I'm starting to explain too much. That's my go-to. Let's get into the details. Woohoo! All right, so invitation. Yes, they're ready to get to work. Again, I'm going to pause because they may start out saying they want habit work. And then you find that there is some underlying trauma or anxiety that's really driving or behind habit work. I'd still do habit work in addition. But sometimes we're like, I wonder if mood work might be a good place to go with this client. And we would just openly discuss that with the client. And then, or relationship work. So after this invitation, they're ready to get to work. Specificity. Now, instead of a mood log, we're going to do habit log. Habit log part 1, which is what do they want to change? And we could also decision-making form. You can do a decision-making form during empathy as well, because we're not asking them to decide. We're asking them to explore the decision-making process. I find the decision-making form extremely helpful in habit work because it really dives into what is this habit doing for them, but what's it also costing them? But in a way that really reflects on how hard it is to change. Without, getting into too much. I really love the decision-making form. All right, after the habit log part 1, we do a triple paradox, which is kind of the equivalent to positive reframing and mood work. What are the benefits of the habit or procrastination? The new goal they want to set, that would be procrastination if they want to create a new goal. What are the costs or disadvantages of changing? And what does that say about them that's positive and awesome? Then we do a paradoxical inquiry. Again, here's that paradox of we truly, genuinely are letting the client sit in the driver's seat. Are they ready for change? Do they really want to do this? After going through all this stuff, maybe not. I've rarely had that happen. By the way, once I get to this triple paradox, clients tend to have a lot of buy-in. But again, I'm just always offering that as every time we ask these kinds of questions, we're actually building motivation. We're building the power of choice, that they're saying yes each step of the way without us ever dragging them along the journey. They're truly saying, this is what I want. And then you can do voicing the resistance. This is a fairly new tool. Again, clients continuing to argue for change. We'll go into process resistance, same ideas in mood work. If they don't, again, we're going to sit with open hands, and we may return to empathy. There might be something different they decide to work on first. It's going to be too hard to do this, that they're deciding, and so on. And of course, after process resistance is methods. And this is habit log part 2. We're going to introduce positive distortions. There's various habit methods, and especially would be doing the devil's advocate. In this procrastination work, we might use little steps for big feats and so on. And again, after every log, mood log, habit log, not relationship journal, but habit log, the logs, not the journals, the mood log and the habit log, we would do relapse preparation. And again, next goal or termination. This would be quite long. Like this is quite simplified. You might find this takes a few weeks in a row, and maybe even a couple months to just get through methods. And that's true of either mood work or habit work. But typically habit work is slightly longer because clients might want that accountability partner. All right, and let's do the relationship flowchart next. Let's zoom in a little so you can see it better. All right, again, start here. Empathy, you're getting the idea. Relationships, same thing as habit work. It's paradoxical. Why? Because relationships and habits, those are hard to change for various reasons. I'm not going to get into that here. We talk about resistance in another video. With relationships, you can use an interpersonal decision-making form at any time. Just like in habits, you could use the decision-making form at any time. Interpersonal decision-making form. Paradoxical invitation. Again, conceptualizing. We're going to take that pause, make sure we're confirming this is the work the client wants to do. Get our moment in time. For the moment in time, we're going to use a relationship journal. Now, here's the tricky part. We're only going to do step 1A and step 2A. Now, different clinicians will do this differently. They may do A and B. If you want to do it that way, go for it. And this is just to give you kind of a bit of a flow. And then we're going to do the interpersonal downward arrow. That's that IPDA. Another word for it is rules versus roles. That's the actual 4-quadrant worksheet. And then the relationship CBA worksheet, or you can use the CBA of blame, any one of those. I wouldn't do all of them. I would pick either CBA of blame or the relationship CBA worksheet. If you do the CBA of blame, then you're going to make sure you're going to go through the 3 options for any relationship and circular causality. Then, like in habit work, we'll ask a paradoxical inquiry after they've gone through and fleshed out a little bit about these rules and roles. Like, do they want to change these rules that they have in this relationship? Do they want to improve this relationship? Yes or no? Voicing resistance, again, I typically don't do voicing resistance in relationship work, but I know other therapists that do, and they love it because I say it creates a script of why the client wants to improve their relationship, and that helps keep them motivated when things start to get sucky again, because you kind of get excited about these things. You go home and your spouse says something, or your partner says something, or your kid says something, and it doesn't feel so motivating anymore. And again, if there's no's, we sit with open hands again, all that whole model, and then we go into methods, right? If the client's ready to get to work. And then there's all kinds of methods for relationship work. Here I even put in another relationship journal, because in relationship work, we want to do several in a row before we really get into relapse preparation training. And we would encourage them to do 5 secrets practice. We're going to kind of critique them and help them and give them examples and demos, because 5 secrets is not easy to learn, even though it's very simple to explain. It's not easy to learn, and it's very hard to do when you feel triggered. It's very hard to do in really close relationships. So it needs lots of practice. And I'll say the reason it's hard is because even though it says 5 secrets of effective communication, these are way bigger than communication tools. If there isn't a change in the person, you really cannot do the 5 secrets. And we don't like articulate that change it will naturally happen as I practice the 5 secrets. That's just the effect of it. So I hope these 3 flowcharts will be helpful to you in navigating Team CBT and all its little nuances and all the different techniques that are available to you as you work with your clients.